we go. The last podcast of the year.
Oh, what a year it's been. Today is December 31st, the end of the year of 2020, a quite memorable year in many ways. But hey, thanks for tuning in. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, and we are episode 439.
You got it.
439. We come to you twice a week, traditionally Mondays and Thursdays, frequently on holidays, while the rest of you are, kicking back, relaxing in your PJs, watching reruns and Netflix. Mike and I are slaving away in our office.
We're just
recording
making it happen,
today's
man.
free podcast.
Any day, no days. Every day's a day.
Every day. I mean, every day is a day.
Just a day.
Yeah, it's been a year.
Special.
So we'll try to end it on a high note. Maybe we'll talk about it today. Maybe we won't, but we'll see. We appreciate you tuning in again. If it's your first time listening, go back. We have 438 other podcasts for you to go through and peruse. Mike does an outstanding job of outlining those with bullet points on. You can go back and just pick and choose the ones you feel that are most relevant, or certain topics and subjects you want to search for whatever you're kind of feeling or going through or trying to discover. Or you can just start back at number one, blaze your way through and question, why are these guys still doing this? Yeah, blaze your way through and ask yourself, why are these guys and how are they still around? But
hey, that might be a good thing to put out
like
there.
gnats, baby.
Today, we got long weekend. You might be able to get through all of them.
You
if
probably
just went
could.
Straight.
Yeah, I mean, leave them on while you're sleeping, and it's one of our. We'll talk more than it, but our the guy that built this whole building and we lease our space from lives across the street. He started listening to our podcast, and he's like, dude, why? One of these, I fell asleep the other night. I listened to one podcast, and I have yours up next, and I woke up at 2:00 and I heard your voice, and I was like, that's not. I was like, that's not really the landlord-tenant relationship I'm sure you wanted, was to wake up at 2:00 and hear one of us chirp in your ear. But whatever, we will chirp in your ear a little bit today. Again, if it's your first time listening, thanks. We have a lot of podcasts for you to cover. We cover all things triathlon and a whole lot of life, which is what 2020 has been. It's been a lot more life and a lot less triathlon. But we will oftentimes go into swim, bike, run training. We'll have on random guests at random times once a year.
Yeah, who was our last guest?
I don't know who our last guest was.
Mike Riley?
And I think it was Mike Riley deep in the quarantine. Deep in the quarantine. We had Mike Riley on. He reached out and was like, hey, I wouldn't mind being on you guys' podcast. So I was like, yeah, we'll welcome you with open arms and come on in. But yeah, we cover it all. And we'll both Mike and I, as both coaches and athletes, talk about what we're personally going through on both sides of the coin, the athlete coin and the life side. And then we'll frequently talk about what our athletes are going through. And then sometimes, like last week, we'll hop into our closed group, which is on Facebook. You can search Crushing Iron Group, answer one simple question, and we will let you in. A lot of awesome people in there, a lot of great wisdom, a lot of awesome experience from beginners to, middle of the pack athletes to people just trying to find their way and work their way up to the, doing the full distance of an Ironman. You've got Ironman champions. You've got everyone in there. So hop in there, be part of the discussion, be part of the positivity, and we will welcome you into our community. But yeah, for the most part, Mike and I, as both coaches and athletes and best friends, sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, and if we can share with you some wisdom that you can consume freely and apply to your daily life and make it your own, then we will consider this podcast a success.
Yes, we will.
Should we announce our new sponsors for 2021 right now?
Let's give it up. Let's give it up for our sponsors.
Let's give our sponsors. The first sponsor, we have been, debating the last few weeks internally if we're going to add in sponsors, and so we'd like to announce 4 that we're going to have with our coming this year. So I know it's we're not doing that shit. So relax. We'll keep.
I thought we were going to fake our way through that.
No, fake our way through. No, I can't.
This isn't
man.
April 1st.
I feel too.
It's January 1st.
I felt too dirty even just doing it and going.
I know, man. I could just feel it.
People on the edge of the seat, I'm like, we probably already got 2 1-star likes. Like, these guys said they were never doing sponsors, and just go back and edit that. We're here. We'll as long as you're going to keep listening, we'll keep turning these things out, and we'll find ways you can support us through apparel or our memberships or athletes, but whatever. We'll find a way. Just like this year, we all found a way, and yet here we are, December 31st, last day of the year. We're sitting here, and I feel pretty grateful.
Yeah. I feel grateful too.
Your face says the opposite.
No, I do. No, I do, man. It's just like this. I was talking to somebody the other day. I was like, I just feel like there's a tad, like a real small layer of numb on everything. It's like just kind of sitting there. Like normal stuff. And we had a little discussion beforehand about like the location of Christmas on the calendar, and I just think that there's this thing about we're wanting to get excited about things, but there's just a little bit of, or pulling the reins back, which may be good training for everything we talk about.
Patience,
actually,
baby.
the patience piece of everything. It's sort of like, I think I've talked about the guy I started a t-shirt shop with long ago, and he was always real like level. He never got too excited or never got too down at all, and it was just always right in the middle. And I was like, come on, man, this is the greatest thing ever. And he's like, yeah, it's nice, or whatever. And, you know, but I think there's some power in that. You know, that's that very stoic thing we were talking about.
That's
you know?
probably how our athletes feel when they're like,
so I wonder
Coach,
if this
I crushed it. I'm like, you know, that was fine. Well
define
done.
crush. That's what you say.
Exactly.
Like, what do you mean by crush?
All right, let's let that slide. I know you're still going back to like the day you texted me. You got out of the pool.
I
and
remember
you were like,
where I was when
I
that
know you
happened.
do.
I was in the locker room
downtown
with the
Y,
I'm like,
probably.
dude,
Nashville. You're like, dude,
crushed.
I crushed it. I'm like, what exactly did you crush? And I'm like, oh, I did some like, all right, man, moving on. What's the next topic for today?
What are you going to do tomorrow?
Yeah, and whatever. It wasn't stoic. It was just reality, man. Just trying to bring us.
I love it. I'm just saying,
keeping the stoicism.
I think that might be a bonus thing that we have this sort of like.
I agree. I mean, if there's ever been
tether on us a little bit here.
Stoicism. I mean, if you haven't, and I'm not getting, you know, any percentage of referral points from reading The Obstacle of the Way. It was a great year to read it from Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite books ever. Read it. If you haven't, get it. Use one of your gift cards you probably got for Amazon and, you know, purchase it. Read it. It's an awesome book. It's good for any year. But yeah, what I said was, and may or may not be the direction we go with the podcast, but we were talking about January 1st and how people are all gung ho, and I think we even kind of alluded to this some on the podcast we did on Tuesday, was that I think a lot of people get even more excited about the new year in January 1st because a lot of people celebrate Christmas, they get a lot of new stuff. And so when they think, because of the proximity between Christmas and New Year's,
I like this.
People are like, it's true, man.
No, I like the theory.
It's like, I don't think people would be nearly as excited and gung-ho about January 1st if Christmas was in June. If Christmas was in June,
it's
okay,
hypothetical.
Seriously, if Christmas was in June and it wasn't
July,
and it wasn't, yeah, even better.
Okay.
You know, in the heat of summer, like what? Like, oh well, you know, I want. What are you gonna say? I want to, you know, especially triathletes. I want stuff for this new year. What can I tell my spouse or my friends? What can I buy for myself to really get awesome for this new year? Like, what's gonna help me change? You know, do I need to buy different clothes to help motivate me to lose weight or to help me to gain weight? Do I need to buy a new helmet? It's gonna get me on the. But do I need to do a smart trainer? That's gonna make me work out more. What can I buy to help get me excited? Because once January 1st hits, I need to be more excited, more committed, and motivated. Well, that's easy to do right now because you can buy your way to some excitement for the year, the week leading up to January 1st. Like, oh, I got this new stuff. I can't wait to unpack it. I can't wait to use it. You got this excitement, and that can fuel you for the first, 4 days until you flounder your way through and it all loses its luster. So what if Christmas was in June? I honestly believe, and so you get Thanksgiving, which again should be, you know, bookended by at least 2 months, having its own greatness of a holiday, and then you've got nothing in December, and then you've got January 1st, New Year. Just it. I think people are like, here we go, another day, another year. We're just kind of turning the page. I think Christmas makes New Year.
It's not a bad theory at all, because if you think about it, so what if there was no years? What if it was just time?
I mean, it is.
It really is, but I don't know why I don't know the history of that, but
pyramids.
It's got to go back to the pyramids somehow. But if you think about it, it's like with our podcast. This is 439.
Mm-hmm.
What if maybe we should start a new season, and maybe that'll give us a whole new thing? Because they offer that on the upload thing. They're like season like season 1 or season 2. You know, it's kind of because it's all based on sort of the network television model. Here comes the new season.
People get excited.
So what if we started a new season and the podcast would be exactly the same? There would be nothing different. And I think maybe that's the point. But I think there's something to be said for your theory here, because it creates that the new, and then we get to do something. We change everything in the new year, but it's always, you know, for most people exactly the same. Yeah. But would it be a grinder if there was no New Year's? Like, what if this was just day, 47,802 of my life or whatever? You know, it's like
most people don't even work this whole week. So what would that be? I'm just saying, like it's like, hey, let's just Christmas here, New Year's Eve. We're just gonna take off the 24th. Or what if Christmas was gone and it was in June? You wouldn't be like, we're gonna have Christmas Eve and Christmas, and then we're just gonna take off the next 6 months till New Year's because that makes sense. No, it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, I'm telling you, it would change. It would change the world as we know it to put Christmas in June. Absolutely.
Oh, in a good way.
100% in a good way. Because I think people totally mail it in at the end of the year because Christmas is right there. If you put that out in the middle of the year, I think it would bring. I mean, you have to decorate different instead of like garland and pine tree crap. You can put up palm trees and luau leaves and whatever because it's summertime for most of us. But I mean that's us in the U.S. for most part. But think about I'm telling you, it would be a game changer, and I think it'd be helpful
because it's a day.
I think. But think about here's the thing: most people come out of the gate, and it would basically give people 2 chances to be successful. You come out of the gate January 1st, and let's say it's it's January 1st.
Move the day.
What?
You can't move birthdays.
I'm saying you can't. Okay, you can't move January 1st. You can move Christmas. Okay, I mean you can't. But I'm just saying, like, what if the whole I know it's a religious thing, but like, what's?
I see. What if you shifted
proximity?
What if December was in the middle of the year?
Sure, something like that.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Okay. Done. Totally. Anyway, we'll move on here in a minute, and I'm sure we've already lost all 7 of you that listen to us with the whole sponsor thing. Lost 3 more of you, and now it's just our
shit
friends
happens,
listening.
man.
But hey, I'm telling you, it'd be a game changer. Think about it when you get super excited. Think about what if Christmas was in June.
It'd be a game changer.
I'm telling you, it would be a game changer. Think about it. I challenge you to celebrate Christmas next year in June. My birthday is the 17th. If you want to have like a little bit of a shindig and like do some things, and have it around my birthday.
I think
during TriCamp.
The point is well taken there because of the New Year thing, but I don't know. For me, it's just like I feel like we need new beginnings or something, like, or at least
we get one every day we wake up.
I know, right? So that's a really good point. We've got to, but there's so many of them we take it for granted. But maybe we know that we shouldn't do that, right? So how do we figure out? In our own minds usually, because obviously not you, because you just, you were so excited about this day that you woke up at 3:00 today.
I woke up at I woke up at 3:40. I'm that excited to end this year.
People are mailing it in, but not you, buddy.
No, I woke up at 3:30, went to bed at 9:00. I woke up at 3, and I was like, I'm up. I wasn't provoked, which is, usually I'm provoked to wake up, and my kid comes in and wakes me up, or I'm an early riser, but I woke up this morning at 3:30, 3:40. Laid there. Okay, I won't say I was unprovoked because I had that like, do I need to pee? Do I not need to pee thing?
Oh,
and I was like,
you're getting older, man.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, 40's hit me hard this year. And I was like, just whatever, just go ahead and get up because I was like, hey, I can get up and have a peaceful start to the day. I can get some work in. The end of the year is busy and trying to create training blocks and outlines for athletes and stuff. So like I can get some work in. I can put on the Tennessee Missouri basketball game from last night that I recorded. I'm not going to check any ESPN or anything. I have that on in the background. I'll be peaceful and quiet. Hayden will be sleeping. He went to bed at he fell asleep. I was reading a book last night and then slept like 11 hours. So he slept through like a champ. But yeah, I woke up unprovoked. But I'm excited right now. Okay, whatever. It's got to do with the new year, but it has nothing to do with Christmas. Okay, it's just like a new year and like certain. I think it's optimism. I think we're excited, and I think what you said is relevant in terms of trying to walk into the year with patience and not getting too overly excited. But I think there's a huge difference in being excited and being optimistic. And every day I kind of think, I'm really excited about this year, and I think things are going to be different, hopefully, and think more races are going to happen, and things are going to trending in a different direction, and all that's great. And I also think it's important to help capitalize off people's optimism, and because I think what we saw a lot of this year was, going back to what I was referencing, like putting the obstacles away, is like. You saw a lot of people just straight up persevere this year. They're like, okay, from businesses to relationships to people and to for athletes, like you saw people find a way this year, no matter what, to figure out a way to train, to figure out a way to look at businesses. Like you look at the restaurants that are thriving right now versus the ones that closed. And yeah, there's probably some underlying circumstances there, but the ones that like totally adapted and were like, okay, we've been thrown a pretty giant curveball. Let me see if I can figure this out. And they're the ones that are thriving right now while other ones are closing. Like you have to be able to be flexible and be like, okay, the obstacle is the way. Athletes do the same thing. So I think athletes have this optimism right now, which is a good thing. I think you should capitalize on it. Generally speaking, I don't believe hope and optimism are negative, and that can be, unless it's like, something you believe that's totally false and you're just kind of faking your way through it. But I think it's great to be optimistic and excited and hopeful about the year, because I don't think it's going to hurt you. I think it's going to propel you in a different direction. I think just generally having that, and I've seen it with athletes this year, I've seen it with people, seen it with friends, seen it with family, is that the people who have seen this year as and taken it on as more of a challenge or an opportunity to grow and figure out things and be resilient and grow and just be a different person this year, they're the ones that are succeeding in a different place versus the ones that are just continuously on this, carousel of like, okay, when's this going to happen? I really need everything to be perfect for things to line up, and nothing's going to happen soon. No races are happening. I think I'm just going to sit around, and then you're going to what? Like, you're wasting time. Like we just talked about, everyone needs the time to start over, but you can have this opportunity to make this decision anytime you want to about when you want to start over with your mindset. It can be tomorrow, it can be yesterday, it can be in 2 weeks, but that's up to you. And you can look at this last year as, oh, what the worst year ever, and I can't wait for 2020 to be over. Well, guess what? If we extended it by one day, it'd be the same thing tomorrow. So like we can make up your mind to look at this new year in a different way and to take it as a challenge and grow, take it on, prove something to yourself. Don't just sit back and that's something that we've done this year, as coaching and one of the things that we're, I think, the most proud of this year in terms of what we've been able to do with our athletes is, that's what the thing we've kind of stuck with our athletes is let's just keep moving. Let's just keep moving forward. Like, we're not going to mail it in. We're going to be flexible. We're going to understand what's going on with your life and all the new, things that are different in terms of, virtual and no travel and kids at home and all the other stuff and not being able to go to the pool or not being able to do this and, the flux of lockdowns and no lockdowns and quarantine or no quarantine. And I was exposed to this and not exposed to that. And like, you got to be flexible at the same time. Like, let's just keep moving forward. You can't just sit still, because the longer you sit still, the better it feels. And then you become comfortable with sitting still instead of more comfortable moving. And I think that has been the biggest issue I've had with so much of this year.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to drill down on there. I know that certain people have had it rougher. We have to acknowledge that, that certain obstacles are bigger for a lot of, for some people, like in the restaurant business or what have you, like in certain states and things like that. We understand that. And I do think that, this whole thing about being optimistic and, it's such a weird thing to pour so much optimism on one day like that. And I keep going back to it, and I think that, yeah, you can turn it on whenever you want. And for me, that is right now. It's like it is difficult. If you think about it, really, there's really no choice. If you want to keep pushing forward, or you can just sit back. I mean, you look at things throughout history, and it's the same type of deal. It's like whatever situation you're in, you have to figure out how to find optimism or find ways to go forward. It could be like, realistically, you could have a 2-week vacation on the beach, and by, day 6, you might be like, man, this is boring. This sucks. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, there's always that. It doesn't matter what the situation is. You have to figure out, like, okay. And like, you get up at 3:30 and you're excited about what's in front of you. And that's really all that matters. Really, it's, everything in the past is gone. It's just an illusion right now. It's like, why, the whole idea of letting go of the past is like probably the biggest thing ever, as far as being able to move forward with like something new in your life, or like changing, if you're going to change, you can't really hang on to that. You just have to let it go. And it's easier said than done, obviously.
I think, for the most part I obviously agree with that. I know a lot of people have had it different levels of, obstacles and tragedy and trauma and, all kinds of stuff that's happened this year. I obviously recognize that. But on the other hand, like, I think a lot of people on the flip side have gotten so caught up in that they basically projected that same misery on themselves for no apparent reason.
It's easy to do that,
because
man.
It is. I get that. Like, I think,
like, you see what's going on somewhere else, and you're like, man,
well,
that's my life.
Just pick up your phone and look up, any kind of news outlet or social media, and you're like, oh, it's just like freaking exhausting and terrifying at the same time. And you're like,
man. Can I just say that they highlight things? This is the big thing, obviously, with me, right? Is that when you see on the media, really, is this highlight of things. And it's so weird, because I was in it. I know it, to my core. I understand how they do that. But like, here we are. And if you get trapped in that, like, I can forget that in an instant, because like, there's something about seeing thing on a TV that you just like, it just becomes truth, man. And that is like a weird kind of like, manipulation of your brain or something.
Manipulates your own truth, which just makes it even more.
Yeah, because
scary.
Then we walk down here and I'm like, wait, it's not like that at all around here. And maybe in where you're at, it's one of those things where, you know, like I was just in Nashville, right? And it just felt like the whole city of Nashville had exploded or whatever. And it's basically, you know, a block, and it was a terrible thing and everything like that. But like those kind of things happen, I think, a lot, where it's like, it feels like
enormous.
Yeah. Or, you know, and it's like that fear factor of, you know, you might go somewhere and it feels like it's scary. Maybe it could be an Ironman race for that matter. It seems intimidating, but once you get there, you're like, oh man, these are just people walking around and I feel good and they're happy, and it's not like a really intimidating moment. So I just think that you can get in your head, you know, and your head starts like flipping around up there, and that's the important part of moving forward and just kind of walking through the fire, as we say.
What's one of our favorite quotes on the wall? It's like,
it's on our wall here.
What matters most is how well you walk through the fire. And this has been the year too for most people to walk through in every way. Everyone's had their life disrupted or changed. A lot of people have had their lives changed for the better this year with circumstances like, you know, people who, you know, have gotten new jobs or having to travel. They got more time with their kids. Like, it's all about, you know, perspective, I think. And obviously there are other people, you know, healthcare workers and teachers whose lives have been totally drastically changed. But for the most part, like, it's always interesting though too. Like, you see those people are the ones that, in my experience, and the ones that I'm close to that are working in the healthcare field, and the ones that are teachers, like, yeah, they're not happy about things, but they complain less than people who have basically had their lives like not even dramatically changed, like in any way. They're just more inconvenienced. But no, I think, you know, if you look at, you know, how, you know, when you want to approach the next year and what you want to accomplish, and when you look back, and you can go with optimism, you can go with a plan, you can go with a strategy, you can go with, you know, oh, well, it's got to be better than last year, it's got to be better than this. And, you know, all we can do is, you know, I love what you said in terms of, you know, or going back to what we talked in the beginning about, you know, leveling your excitement, and what you're saying about, you know, everything seems bigger in our own world, in our own universe, right? Like, everything seems large. And that's one of my most favorite things about, like, when you go to Ironman events and you're walking around town and you assume everyone knows what's going on. Everyone knows there's an Ironman taking place. Everyone knows the exact distances. Everyone knows the time, that commitment that's had. But you walk on the street and you go to, like, you know, a random like shop or whatever, and these people are like, hey, why are there so many people here? Is there something going on? And you're like, yeah, I'm doing an Ironman. They're like, what's that? And you're like, well, you know, you do, they're like, is that a Spartan race? You're like, no, let me finish. I swim 2.4 miles. And you're like, are you serious? All in one day? And you're like, yeah, actually that's not even it. Like, I do a 112-mile bike. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, do you get a break? Do you get to, like, get off your bike? And you say, well, actually, you do it for time. Like, oh, do you win? Have you ever won one?
Yeah,
they're
right.
like, oh, I think I've seen this on NBC. Have you gone to Kona? And you're thinking, here I am thinking everyone knows exactly what's going on, because this is the biggest day of your year, probably, if you're doing one of these, unless you're a person that does, you know, multiple ones every year. It's like this huge day where you expect everyone to know what's going on. Everyone in your social media channels following you and tracking you and sending you messages, and your Facebook post of your pre-race breakfast meal has 700 likes and 9,000 comments. Like, crush that, you know, it's like, do it. And then you walk up next to some, perfect stranger on the street. That's like, by the way, that was a great show, by the way, Perfect Strangers. Is if you walk by someone, they're like, what's going on right now? And you explain to them, you realize how, not insignificant, but in the grand scheme of things, how small what you're doing is on the scale of like what everyone is interested in. And I think it puts into context, like when you look at the scale of the year and how you think all of these big days are going to be the biggest days that you have. But when it comes down to it, it's all about the days, like the single days that you put in. And like I made this note in in a few athletes actually, notes for starting on Monday was that, you know, this is a very simple block here, like a very simple 2 or 3 weeks. And I would love to say that, you know, I'm not asking you to, you know, for something magical, but I kind of am, because the consistency comes from, and the magic comes from the consistency. And so we are asking for magic to happen because we're asking you to be consistent in finding a groove. But we love to jump to these, you know, dramatic events or these horrible things or these highlight reels or these big race days. And like, if those are the days we hang our hats on, they're the Christmas days, the January days. And if you really look back on like the day of the year, I would probably argue that 99.9% of people would say their best day of the year had nothing to do with the holiday. It had nothing to do with the race. It was something totally random that they remember for a specific reason that they could never have planned and never have thought of, but it was just another day. And I think that when we start to heap on all these expectations and goals that come with, you know, these New Year's resolutions that everyone's going to concrete and staple to their social media platform profile page, like a commandment is like, this year I'm going to do this. And like the weight of that is tremendous. Like that you're putting on yourself, because then you feel immense pressure. You have to do everything perfectly. Like I don't understand it, to be honest with you, because like it's hard enough to just wake up every day and just kind of I don't know, do your best and figure out like, and then move forward. And I just think if you're, and I get that it's not sexy, and I get that it's, not something that people are going to like clamor about or be excited about. And, but the magic is in the days, like, and it's about training 340 days next year instead of, 280. It's not about the 3, it's about the 300. And I think that's where we kind of lose sight and perspective of what's really important and how we can really achieve all the great things we want to on those specific days. That it all comes back to, what are you going to do tomorrow? And then how's that going to impact the next day? And can you keep doing it? And can it be sustainable? And can you stay healthy? And can it be fun? And can it be engaging? And those are the things that matter, but those aren't the things that are nearly as fun to talk about.
No, I agree with that so much, man. I mean, as I coach the people I'm working with, and as I coach people, one of the biggest things I talk about is, or I help try to build in them, is confidence in not only themselves, but the plan. And for me, a lot of that is to alleviate fear, because I think fear is one of those things that can really keep you out of the moment. It's like I remember it so well, back to when I first decided I'm going to do an Ironman. It was 8 years or 9 years ago, or 8 years ago. And it just sort of gets in your head. It's like, can I, this fear factor. And to me, like, alleviating fear about just getting up, like that, anything really, because once you can wipe that out, it sort of clears the deck for excitement, or like, for you to be free and go into your day, no matter what the day is. And if you have something lingering out there as a fear factor, it's kind of like, it just sort of, it creates that anxiety or whatever it is. And I just think about, as you're talking about that, feeling at the Ironman, posting, and how many, how the adrenaline rush of those few days. First of all, I missed those a lot. I'm ready for them to come back, because, man,
we are ready to see you.
Like I said many times, I was like, I just want to go spectate, man. Mm-hmm. I want to get that feeling and be around that energy. And there's something so magical about that. And for me, it kind of, it goes back to that, it's not one day anymore. Suddenly, we know people racing, on 20 some days of the year. Those are days for us that kind of like, it's kind of like watching your team or something like that. And it literally is like watching your team. Mm-hmm. And it's a fuel. And it's sort of like, okay, so, you look at like looking at New Year's Eve or New Year's Day as a new start. And then we kind of look at these pockets throughout the years. Like you need a little bit of a, juice. And then how do you kind of like go between these races and, just kind of keep consistency. And I think that for me, at least, that's a big part of it, because when I'll go to a race and see people doing it, I'm like, all right, I'm back in, but like, if you don't have those, or there's really, and hopefully our podcast on some level has, created that, because it does for me, like we get done with these things and I'm like, all right, I'm going to get on the bike or whatever. It's like, so that's the sort of stuff that, that you want to kind of have in your life. It's that, like, you create your own world, right? You create your own excitement.
You can create your own life, your own atmosphere, your own environment, by who you surround yourself with and what you choose to expose yourself to. And then either the expectations that you heap upon yourself, or just the mentality and perspective that you choose to have. And I think I think one of the biggest, misconceptions that we have is that, and I think you're this way to an extent. I think you've mentioned it before in many podcasts, that like you feel like you thrive under pressure, or not last minute, Larry, but the time crunch of something, and I think, I think we've like gone that way as a society, as like, we have to be in a hurry and we have to have some kind of heaping pressure to be able to succeed. And you have that's like, oh, well, diamonds are created from pressure. And you're like, okay, first of all, those takes like, I don't know, hundreds of years. So it's not like, that's not really the analogy people, exactly. It's not the analogy people think it is, I think. But, I think when you look at, and again, it's not like a year-end review or how you want to look at the year. It's just like how you want to live your life. Like, I think we have so many higher reaching expectations and pressures that we put upon ourselves to be, and I'll speak for myself, like as a parent, like some days I put an enormous amount of pressure on myself as a parent to try and be the best parent I can for Hayden. And that's a ton of pressure to put upon yourself, like to be, because no parent is perfect and parenting is hard, and kids are, especially at 4, they're like insanely erratic, and like one day they're like yesterday it was, a great example. I think this is an example of like just how, where I'm using Hayden as like an example of life here, because life is changing and has, is unpredictable. It's yesterday morning, it was like, I was basically asking him to move heaven and earth just to go pee before we went to daycare. It was a knockdown, drag out fight yesterday morning. And in a typical, toddler adult fashion. And then I was fine. And then this morning he woke up and he was like, "Hey Dad, just so you know, I'm not going to put up a fight today to brush my teeth and go potty. I'm just going to do it." And then and I was like, "Sweet, man, that's awesome, man. Let's just kind of roll with it."
You think he rolled around in bed going, "Man, I got to be different."
Well, he had some. I took away his chainsaw, I took away his chainsaw. He had some consequences, and he didn't get him back. He wanted to get him back when he got home from school yesterday, and I was like, "Sorry, dude, you ain't getting your chainsaw back." He was he's a builder. He's a worker, dude. He loves blue collar anything, and so this morning he was like, "Hey Dad, I'm not gonna." I was like, "Sweet, man, that's fine." And then about 20 minutes later, he was like, "Hey Dad, is it time to go to school yet?" And I was like, "Sure, if you want." He's like, "Let's go to school." And I was like, "Who the hell are you, and what'd you do with my kid that you were yesterday?" Obviously, you can stick around for as long as you want to until the other one never come back. But, I think that's just, like, you wake up these mornings, you predict how things are going to go, and you assume it. And like, for me, like, the pressure of, like, trying to be a parent. Like, yesterday, I felt impossible. This morning, I was like, dude, this is easy. I got this in the bag. But then you realize neither one of them are true. Like this morning, it didn't mean I was the perfect parent because things went perfectly. It just meant circumstances arose that made the day seem like it was just fine and great, and I'm succeeding. I'm like, dude, I'm crushing this dad thing right now. Like, look at me, I just did it.
Oh, yeah.
When it could be totally irrelevant, right? And the day before, like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I didn't make him be that way. He was just, a 4-year-old who is, struggling with his emotions, didn't want to take a leak. Like, big deal. But if
he's a human,
it's just a human. Like,
right? You can't control that.
And like, everyone has these feelings and thoughts, and that is the hardest part. And I think one of the most not talked about issues in life, I think, in people and in athletes is and it's getting worse, to be honest with you, adults' inability to manage, deal with, and address what they're going through mentally and their emotions, or just frankly not working through them and just ignoring them and not being able to work through those things. And it affects athletes, it affects people. And I think that's one of the things that if you are a person who wants to make a list of goals and expectations and things you want to do this year, then make that one of them to learn how to, or to challenge yourself to, work through thoughts and feelings. I would probably say 90% of our athletes would say, I'm more of their psychiatrist or psychologist than I am their coach, or I'm equal parts, psychologist. Like, I joke about that all the time, because I think on a few Zoom calls I talked about that when I first went to college, that when I started out, I took I took general ed, then took psychology class. I wanted to be a psychologist, and I am 100% a psychologist. Like,
funny. I did that too.
It's like how you end up, like,
that was my major for like 3 months.
Until I realized it was mine for a year and a half, so I dropped out. But yeah, here I am. That's mostly what it is. It's like psychology and working with people and understanding things and working with, because you have to be able to unlock. Like, we put so much expectation and so much, like, everyone's going to have these, especially from a sporting and a performance perspective. Like, most people are going to make goals that are only centered around achievement, physical achievement, via the expression of fitness, whether it's a mile time or it's 5K or a 70.3 or whatever.
Measure that, man.
They're gonna do that, but because it's a time, it's something tangible, they can see it. It's motivating.
Yeah.
Very few people are going to say, you know what, this year I'm going to do? I'm going to be more consistent. I'm just going to get more work done. And I'm going to try to navigate life better using whatever these tools you want to use, or reading a book or taking a course or meditating, whatever it's like. But I know that in order for me to be successful, I'm going to really try and manage like the internal struggle that I have mentally and emotionally, because that's what prevents people from doing things. That's what keeps people on the couch. That's what keeps people from pursuing things or having confidence, or they give up, or they don't feel like they're good enough, or they hold themselves back, or they self-sabotage. Like it's mental and it's emotional. Yes, you have to have physical attributes, you have to do the work, but like it's overlooked. The amount of time you should spend, I think, working on your overall emotional, mental maturity or lack thereof in your ability to deal with life. And I think a lot of people have found this year how either well or not great you deal with life. It's been a crash course.
It definitely has, man. And I mean, like I said, I think it's tough to measure that kind of thing. And, like every once in a while you might see somebody say, hey, I've worked out for 37 straight days or whatever. And you have that kind of tangible thing. But like, how do you know? And it's sort of like, I always talk about having intention and moving, just knowing you're moving the right direction and whatever that boils down to. And like I said, if I can instill, I guess, confidence in athletes that, allows them to be more of themselves, and that to me is like a big deal, sort of finding a comfort zone within the uncomfortable zone of training that can kind of weigh you down and sort of, I don't know, become obsessive or something like that. But how do you be free? I was talking about this guy I listened to, Alan Watts, the other day, and he talks about life as a dance and how you should dance through it. And the best dancers are not rigid. It's sort of like just flowing more so than trying to prescribe to the exact right movement all the time and the right thought. It's just sort of like what you're saying about Hayden. You can't control other people like that. And there's a sweet spot when you kind of can flow through the day or flow through the life. And I think that one day, just doing that every day. I mean, like if that's your thing, right? You get up and just be like, okay. And you've talked about it many times. Don't let that spilled cup of coffee, dictate the rest of your day or whatever. Just sort of like laugh about it. And that's another thing Watts says all the time. Just like quit taking everything so seriously, just like really let go and like trust the universe that things are going to work out, because you really don't have a choice. You can't control. You can, only control so much. And a lot of times you always talk about it's like you can control your effort. What's your effort, piece today? Yeah. What kind of what are you going to do? How and that's funny. The other day you were talking about that 10-minute block thing, and I was upstairs at, kind of like doing nothing and screwing around. I'm like, oh, that 10 minutes is gone forever.
Gone, like, wasted.
Wasted. So I think but those are habits you kind of like, if you keep thinking about that, it kind of starts seeping in over time.
It's about effort and intent, which are the things like you can control those two things. And in a while, and I think that's the other, misconception a lot of athletes and people have, is that there needs to be an immediate, tangible, measurable, braggable, data-oriented, analyzed result at the end of everything that I do ever. And that's not how it works. There are some sessions and some workouts and some days where you probably need to be able to measure yourself by, was it a win or a loss, or was it great or not great, or, is it acceptable or not, depending on what, line of work you're in or what kind of athlete you are or what you're doing at the time. But for the most part, it's just a very, 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 very small piece of the giant puzzle, right? It's not like you don't finish the puzzle all at once. You don't just dump out the, a 1,500 puzzle piece box and be like, hey, they all just magically come together. You don't do it in 1 second. You do it piece by piece by piece by piece. And you might not be able to see the whole picture at one time, but if you put a few together, you can start to see the beginnings of it. You can put the outlines together. You can put the border. You can put, one picture together that might fit on this other part. None of it's done, but what you can see is your effort and intent to get it finished. While you might only be able to see on the box what the finished product might look like, you at least feel like you're en route to making the finished product. You're not succeeding with the actual finished product or the finished puzzle, but you're succeeding with every piece. And I think that's what a lot of athletes struggle with, is they try to find a measurable deadline or definite, success by every single session they do, that this is a great one or a bad one. But a lot of times it's just a piece, and a lot of times, for the most part, a lot of your training is just the glue. It's just the pieces that connect the other big pieces that are really important, but you can't have those big pieces without connecting them with these other smaller pieces, but it's those big pieces that everyone gets really, really excited about because they are like the pillars of what they do and what they want to achieve and what they have their goals set as. But you can't get to them, or you won't be able to keep them or sustain them if you don't put together the really, really small pieces that are the glue. And I think it, again, not to make a, it's an analogy, it's like, it's what holds it together. It's what holds your year together. It's not the holidays. It's not the races. It's not whatever. It's just the other 340 other days of the year that make up your year. It's not the holidays, the races. It's like the 340 other days a year that's just about kind of just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, that many days. But it's what makes those 15 or 16 days incredible in the days that you want to make them. Or they might not be that awesome. So but you went back and like, oh, my whole year was a waste. This one race went terrible, or Christmas was terrible this year. My year, it's just been a terrible year. And you look back and you think, all right, let's slap what a horrible year on every single thing we did. But if you want to look back, and you can go back like with a magic ball, or be like a person looking within each day you had this year. If you had to put in the win or a loss column the winning days and the losing days, I'm pretty sure most people, if they went through January 1st of this year all the way through this year, and they went through every single day, and they're like, end of the day, they're like, was that a win or loss? Yeah, it's probably a win. Most people would say this year was a win. They would have more winning days than losing days, but all we do is remember the great ones or the poor ones. We never like to total up the amount of, it's like of just the normal days that make up our life. And I think that's where we could put our focus in is the days that make up our life, not, these life-changing days we think that are going to make up, the other part.
Yeah, you're so right. It's just so hard, I think, to, excuse me. When I look back sort of at my first year of training for Ironman, right, and to know where I was at that time, and then when I got to the race, and I actually had a good race, so I was happy with it. But like, I can understand how if things didn't go as well as you planned, you might think that everything you did, but you can't. It's so difficult to look back and see where you came from, right? Like, because you're now a different person, and in order to reflect on what was gained, it's sort of that day to day, grow a little bit each day or get better each day, and that's what you do in Ironman training. And I think it's just we have to figure out a way to remember that. But we're getting towards the end. For a minute, I just want to go back to the fear concept of not being afraid and how important that is. As you know, a year ago today, my father died, right? Mm-hmm. New Year's Eve, and I want this to be a positive. I really think he gave me the biggest gift he ever did when I sat with him for like 3 weeks before that. And that was, he showed me the peace that came with his death. He showed me, so he stripped so much fear away from dying. And I think that ultimately that's like everybody's, biggest fear. Certainly with public speaking, they say, is the other one. Mm-hmm. So, but I just wanted to put that out there because a lot of people have contacted me, and I really appreciate it. And it has been tough. I mean, we hadn't been living close for a long time, so but it's never easy to go through that. But he gave me that, courage, I guess, to face life without that fear. And I ultimately think, and it's just been a weird time for that to kind of come to me, because this year has been all about fear. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that, you've obviously seen me get a little bit frustrated, maybe a little bit mad at times about certain things, because I just do not like people who push the concept of pushing fear. And it just feels like a controlling virtue to me on some level. And that's why I've just been like, oh my God, I just watched my father die last year, and all people talk, and I was at peace with it. And now everybody is scared to death all the time, 24/7. And it's just been so frustrating, because I just it's like a faith thing or something, or when you see, like we talked about, when you see certain things, and you see an Ironman race and you're like, wow, that's just people doing that. It's just people doing stuff. You're not as afraid of it. So I mean, I'm not saying we experienced death, but it's just like a very, I don't know, it's a sort of a poignant moment for me on that, because this year has been mainly difficult, I think, because of frustrations that I feel. And I wish people could come closer together and bond together and realize that we're in this together, and we can't be afraid. We just have to do what we do and, you know, have faith and courage in ourselves and not live life with fear, I guess.
No, I mean, I've obviously been around you a lot this year, and I remember where I was when you texted me about your dad, and I don't think you've, and, you know, I'll say this first, like, I think it's, you know, normal for a lot of people, you know, given all the things that are going on, the uncertainties, like, yeah, if you want to be afraid and you want to be scared and you want to be anxious, then, you know, I think there's some reality and truth behind that. But I think what I've seen from you, and what I think you might call it frustrated, but what I've seen from you is more knowing what your dad passed on to you and what you kind of conveyed to me in the weeks following about, you know, just being at peace and with life and living and, you know, like enjoying it, is that you've almost been more offended that there aren't more people out there living their life to live it instead of being afraid of losing it, and understanding that, you know, like what we have right now is like, yeah, it might sound morbid, but like we have no idea what's going to happen. You know, I think we've all learned that this year. It's like, you know, and there are things that we can do and the way that we choose their life. And I hope that the last days that I have on this earth are ones that that I'm living, that I'm doing something, that I'm like moving and feel like I'm being positive and having a good time. I hope I smile, you know, like on the last day, you know, like I'm doing all those awesome things. I'm not sheltered up and terrified of life. And I don't want to go like that. I don't want to, you know, to go out like that. Like I want to, you know, do that. And I think that's been a part of, I think, a lot of people's, you know, outlook on this year. And I think why, you know, my fear is that's going to have a lot of negative side effects on people and how they progress and the things they choose to do or the things they choose to not do, you know, with their life. And, you know, we had those moments too, like when we were going through, you know, races are getting canceled, businesses are closing, the economy is about, you know, it seems like it was going to crash, and we don't know when things are going to get better, and no one's going to work, and you can't open anything. And we're like, you know what sounds like a great idea? Let's open up a triathlon training facility when all the other ones are closing and everyone is doing, you know, and coaches are, you know,
hey, niche is where it's at, man.
Coaches are quitting, and coaches, you know, and athletes are quitting the sport. Triathlon's dying, and like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do this. And there were times, like, you know, I think we talked ourselves out of doing as many times as we did doing it, but it came down to just like, how do we want to, like, is this how we want to live our life? You know, and by doing this and, you know, I'm sure exactly. I think we said that. Like, we're like, why not? It's like, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen? Is like I think this year is a great, like, if we understood how many businesses go bankrupt or close, it's like not the end of the world, you know, like, so we don't plan on doing that, but like, why not? Like, what? And we've seen, like, since we've done it, like how many wonderful things we've been able to do, not just for other people and our athletes, but for ourselves. You know, I think what it's done for, you know, our connection and things we've been able to do, it's already been worth it. It's all, you know, like, and it's been a few months, and yeah, there haven't been a ton of races, but it's been that piece where we kind of just said, why not? And I'll have to give a lot of credit to Peg Hoffman, who, when we were, I think, talking about, you know, I think I even said this on like an email or weekly email check-in, that I think I was very obvious in my frustration of where things were going and how things were going. And she sent me this list of, she was reading a book, I think, and I'm trying to scroll back and see if I can find it. But oh yeah, she sent me a picture of this book she was reading, and it basically was like, hey, you know, it listed all of these businesses that basically started in the middle of something terrible. And It had Fortune magazine was 90 days after the market crash of 1929. FedEx began during the oil crisis of 73. UPS was in the panic of 1907. Walt Disney, you know, was after 11 months of smooth operations. 12 was a market crash. Hewlett-Packard was during the Great Depression. Charles Schwab, market crash of 74. All this whole list of things that, you know, people started and did while not everyone else, but while it seemed like it was what they were doing was stupid, you know. And I think that's, you know, when you look back at the year as a whole of what we've been able to accomplish, and you look at, triathlon as a whole, and if you look at us, what we do as a business whole, it's like, we still, when we started this year, from the athletes that we started with in January, we still work with 98% of them. And we've, and through, your addition with coaching and Jessica and the club, like, we've gained like 50 plus, it's like which is the opposite of what most, triathlon coaches or, companies or, call them have done this year. It's been a struggle. And, a lot of the credit goes to our athletes and their willingness to just keep working and the culture and the community that our athletes cultivate, which is, you and I would both agree, is our greatest asset. Is our athletes. They're 100% our greatest asset that we, that we're very thankful to have. But it's just that it's, I love what you said. Just, why not? Like, what's the worst thing that happens? It's like, just do it. Like when you wake up tomorrow, should I, do the, 30-minute run? Why not? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Just get out and do it. It is that simple, and figure it out along the way. I think we've also gotten stuck in this, where, how are you going to do this and how are you going to do that? And what's going to be your, what are your projections for year one? And how are you going to make this, profitable? And how are you going to do this? You got to have a very strategic outline for how you're going to be successful. I'm like, yeah, well, you know what? We've done okay the last 4 years, just kind of waking up and feeling like we want to do the right thing and have fun with it and do what's best for our athletes and feel like we can just kind of, rein things in, and that's fine, but it's just, why not? Like, have fun, live your life. And if you've been terrified to do something or to not do something, then just do it. It's like, what's the worst thing, that can happen is, most people would tell you, I think when they pass away, they're not going to regret the things they did. They're going to regret the things they didn't do, or they didn't capitalize on. And that's not something that I wanted to, I didn't want to say a year back, is be like, did you regret that? I would have regretted a million times over, balking and not doing this because, like you said, why not?
Was that a subtle way of announcing our IPO?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to do an REI, thing, co-op.
Yeah, man. That's like, that's the thing, right? It's like, it's just about like walking through the fire, like we said. Why not? Because what happens is our business philosophy is just, we just stew on it for a few days and think about it. And then we're just like, the gut. We go, let's just do it. And we'll figure out a way, You can figure out a way. And I think that's a really good way to think about racing and training and stuff, is like, usually, it may intimidate you, or you may be a little bit afraid of it, but, normally you just figure out a way to get done. Find a way. And I think that's really, that's the point here on a lot of levels. It's just like, let's do it, because you get a lot of times, how many times have you decided to do something, whatever, buy your first car, buy your first house, buy this, do that, whatever. And then, the minute you're in there, it's like, oh, why did I fret that so much? It's just scary. Like, really, nothing's really that different. It's just like, and then you figure out how to make it happen. So
make the leap.
That's the faith, man.
Is this a leap year?
It's a leap year.
I don't know if it is or not, but it would have fit well. Make the leap. But seriously, why not? It's as always with every, whatever. It's just another day. I was going to say, it's been a great year, whatever. It's just another freaking Thursday. We'll be back on Monday. We love you. We appreciate you. We hope you have a safe New Year's and holiday. Enjoy yourself. Kick back, relax, get excited for the year. Whatever.
Hey,
Friday,
I'm coaching.
Cool.
I'm taking athletes. So check me out at C26Triathlon.com under Meet the Coaches, or whatever that tab is.
Meet the Coaches tab, baby. Mike Girali.
Meet the Coaches.
But no, it's we love you. We appreciate you. Join us in June for Christmas. We'll see you then. Other than that, we'll see you on next Monday?
Yep, back like clockwork.
New year, new you, baby.
Season 2 of the Crushing Iron
Season
Podcast.
5 or
Coming
4.
up on Season 2 of the Crushing Iron Podcast. Man. The same thing.
The same thing over and over and over again. Whatever. Consistency.
All right, buddy.
King,
for real,
baby.
Though, Happy New Year, man.
Happy
It's
New
been
Year.
It's been a jam of a year, so make a jam out of it. We'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you in 2 seconds. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.